Today I'm talking to Jeff Walker. Jeff is the founder of the product launch formula and really the pioneer behind the modern launch model in general that he has documented $1 billion in sales from with his group. He's been doing this for 30 years. And what's particularly interesting about this conversation to me is that over that period of time, tactics have changed, platforms have changed, tools have changed, AI has jumped in the picture, but he continues to produce results. So not only are we going to talk about the launch model, but we'll talk about what actually makes a business successful. And according to him, it's the offer. So we'll go through all of the details of what's working today, but also the strategic elements that allow him to continue operating this business for such a long period of time. This episode is not just about launches and business. It's also about how to build a business that will last for the long run. Enjoy. Jeff Walker, thank you so much for joining me, man. It's good to see you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you are like the godfather of product launches. You have been doing this model for a very long time. What is the most common thing that experienced entrepreneurs fuck up when they're launching a product?
I think if a launch is going to go sideways, it's generally because people mess up the offer. In reality, what I do comes out of direct marketing, which has a history that was 100 years before I ever started. And the people that are deep into direct marketing and understand direct response, there's three things you have to get right. There's three primary components, and one would be copy or creative. The other is your audience, your list, and the third one is your offer. And we can sit here and debate this. Direct marketers who want to go down that rabbit hole will debate them, but I think many or most folks think that the offer is the most important thing. I'm in that camp. I think the offer is the number one thing. So if a launch is going to go sideways, you didn't get your offer right. And that's having your offer, first of all, focus on how you're going to change someone's lives. What is the transformation going to be for them? And having a market to message match, which that's a Dan Kennedy saying. I don't know if it came, maybe it was before him, but that's where I heard it. Having the right message of the right offer to your market. And so if a launch is going to go sideways, if someone's going to fuck it up, they're going to fuck up the offer, or they're not going to communicate the true value of that offer.
Yeah, I think the notion of having the offer right is super interesting across the board in business, because so many people just try to launch something, and I mean it not in the sense of a true product launch, but like they start a business and they never really clearly articulate what the actual product, what the proposition is. Right, yeah. What the real offer is, and so it's a lookalike, and it just gets washed away in the midst of the world in general.
Yeah, I've had a couple of times where people are like, "Oh, you literally say this to me, like in social or whatever. Oh, you're Jeff Walker. You can launch anything." Or I was looking at possibly buying a business, and they're like, "Well, you're Jeff Walker. You can just launch it and make all this money." And I'm like, if you know how much work I put into making a launch look effortless, you would, run for the hills. And that work starts with a huge amount of work on that offer. Who are you selling to? What are they just dying to buy? What transformation are they dying to have in their lives? And then how can you promise that transformation? How can you deliver it? And then how can you make people understand that you can deliver it and they can have it?
Okay, so that's at the core. You've now seen so many launches. What are two or three little amplifiers that takes a launch from good to great?
Well, let's see. I think that's a great question. Good to great. So every now and then you have just something that just leaps out of the gate. Like you open up cart. So you have that pre-launch, and then you open up cart, and the sales just take off and they accelerate from there. And I think, there's a piece that it's like lightning in the bottle. How do you capture that lightning in the bottle? And I wish I could capture it every time. I've experienced 20 or 25, 30 major launches that I've done and hundreds that I've witnessed, that it's having the right audience, the right offer, the right message at the right time. And then, of course, it's all the blocking and tackling. I mean, it's getting that sequence right. I mean, at the core, a launch as I do them, it's all about delivering value before reveal. So that's a catchphrase: value before reveal. So you're creating value in someone's life before you even reveal that there's what the offer is. In the old days, before markets were more sophisticated, were as sophisticated as they are now, you wouldn't necessarily let people know right up front that there's an offer coming. These days, this is one of the shifts in the last 10 years. Everyone knows they're in a funnel. Everyone knows they're being sold. Everyone knows they're being marketed to, and in fact, they're suspicious if they're not. So, right in our launches these days, right from the get-go, we say, yeah, there's going to be an offer, but first, before we get to that offer, I want to just deliver a huge amount of value to you. And so delivering that value before reveal, where they feel like they've learned something, they've moved forward in their life. That's just an absolute huge thing that pulls people and gathers their trust and their attention. That's a huge component.
Love it. Well, I want to talk about some of the other details and structural elements of it and how things have changed over time. But I want to start at the beginning. So I know you've told your origin story 1,000 times, but there are lots of thousands of people that have not heard it. So before we hit play or record here, you were telling me that you had an email newsletter in 1996 where you asked people to send you checks for payment. So let's start there and go into how you actually created the product launch formula.
Yeah, so I was actually a corporate failure. I was in the corporate world. I did not do well. Quit probably the week before they would have fired me. And so I quit to be a stay-at-home dad. I was a stay-at-home dad with my 1-year-old son. And then a couple of years later, we had my daughter as well. So now I'm at home taking care of a couple babies and really feeling like a fish out of water there, because I'm not a natural caregiver there either. So, and we were just desperate times. And wife had a good job, but she's supporting the family. So one income family. And we were desperate for money. At that point, I'd been studying the stock market incessantly. Actually, since I was a kid, I was super interested in the stock market and I had a lot of knowledge about it. And so I started publishing an email newsletter about the stock market. The first newsletter went out to 17 people, but it gradually grew through word of mouth. And I created the most crude website. I couldn't afford a domain name. Back then, domains cost a lot more than they do now. Couldn't figure out hosting, couldn't figure out any of that. So I just had this email newsletter that I sent out through blind carbon copy. And eventually, after had about 600 people subscribing to that, I thought, well, maybe I can sell something to these folks. And so I had zero sales experience, zero marketing experience. And furthermore, I had this belief that like sales was creepy. This is the only successful thing that was going on in my life was this free newsletter. People would write back and tell me how awesome I was for sending this free newsletter. And I thought they'd hate me if I asked them for money. And so there's all kinds of, Brad, my mindset was so messed up. It was just so messed up. And I thought this to myself, like if I deliver even more value for free, if I romance them, then maybe they won't hate me if I ask for money. And so this was the origin of the first launch, that delivering that value before reveal. And another phrase is that we use is desire before availability, building up this desire before something's available. So I increased my publishing schedule. I gave more and more. I put together reports and had it lead into this first launch, which started the newsletter in 96. The first launch was early 97. But taking online payments was rocket science then. So I sent out this long email that said, I've got this even better version of this newsletter. And if you write a check and mail it to me, then you can have this upgraded version. And it worked amazingly enough. Well, it worked somewhat. My goals were very, very modest. My goal at that time was to make $10,000 in a year. That was like, if we could do that, it would change my family's fortunes. And that first launched at $1,650. 6 people bought, and 6 people sent me a check. just blew me away that people would give me money for something I created. That was the first brick in the wall that I could create value and someone would willingly give me money for that value I created. Before that, I just made money through going to a job.
And well, I want to highlight that for aspiring entrepreneurs right now, because I think the most common problem for any aspiring entrepreneur is themselves. And said another way, and I know how cliche this is, and I know how frustrating it is to hear when you're a brand new entrepreneur, but your mindset has so much to do with everything. And the way that you get around that is by doing the shit anyway. I don't care how you feel. I don't care what you're thinking. Just go do something. And that's such a beautiful example of, you didn't know how to put up a website. You couldn't afford a domain at the time. You were afraid to ask people for money. You thought sales was dirty, and you pushed through and made something happen anyway, which is a beautiful origin story because it applies to so many people.
Yeah, no, it's nuts to look back and see how your mindset evolves over time. I had a friend at one point in there when I think my business was doing $100,000, and it took me a few years to get there. So I did hit that $10,000 mark. Eventually hit 100,000, maybe, I don't know, in 99, 3 years later. And I met someone out at a conference. He wrote this down. I had it on my wall for years, and it just said, it's just another zero. It's just another zero. So, I mean, to go from 10,000 to 100,000, right? It's just another zero. To go to 1 million, just another zero. And eventually you start believing that. And it's like that first dollar is the hardest. And Brad, I had a couple thoughts early on that were actually really high quality thoughts that set the trajectory for me. And one was when I did that first launch, it's like, if I did this once, I could do it again and again and again. Mm-hmm. That was one thought. And the other thought was, and I might even get better at it. And that's what's defined everything. I've just been grinding it out ever since. It's really
turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So eventually, as lore has it, you were into your 18th launch before you released the product launch formula. How did that come to be, and why did you decide you were willing to teach it? And let me actually set the frame of this by saying, thank God it was your 18th launch, because the number of people today that launch a product before they know what the fuck they're doing and just sell it is gross, and it's going to destroy the industry, and it already is. Yeah. So tell me about the 18th and actually finally launching that formula.
100% agree with you. The number of people that you see on social saying, I'm at my wit's end. I can't make any sales. How do give me some encouragement to keep going? And then you go look at their website and they're selling how to make money online. It's like, do you see what's wrong here? So anyways, what happened to me was, I built that business. So 97, start making sales. 96, start publishing. 97, start making sales. 99, hit the 6-figure mark. Things were going well. I had a partner in that business. He was a content partner. And in 2005, he called me up to tell me that he started a competing website and he was taking all of our clients.
Sweet.
Yeah. That was one of those phone calls. I remember I was sitting over there at my desk back when you had corded phones, and picked up the phone. I had a business, and then I didn't have a business by 10 minutes later. And so that was 2005, in the spring of 2005, and it's like, okay, well, I built by that time my mindset had gotten a lot more bulletproof, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I built one thing, I can build another thing, and I can either fight this out with him in court and continue this business I had about the stock market. But by then I realized that I absolutely loved the marketing, and even more than the stock market. And I started to make some real connections in the online business and marketing world. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to just start over. And the thing that I really know how to do is put together these launches, put together these promotions. And so, that's where I went. I'd met several of the key players who already had audiences, who I'd actually helped them do launches. Names I'm sure many others wouldn't know, but John Reese, Yannick Silver were the absolute kings of the online marketing world at that point. And I'd help them do launches. So they knew this stuff worked just out of the goodness of my heart. I didn't charge them anything. I just, here, do this. And so they said, hey, Jeff, we know your stuff works because it worked for me. If you put together a course on this, we'll promote it for you. And that was the first launch of PLF was in 2005. PLF being product launch formula. Yeah.
Yes. Wild. So what was for those that don't know, and I think the structural elements are super relevant today, I do want to talk about kind of how things have changed, but first and foremost, what are the basic elements of the product launch formula that apply to everybody?
Yeah, first of all, just put a frame on it. When I talk about launches, if you think about the way Apple will launch an iPhone, it's not just like one day that phone shows up on their website. We all know that. When you say it, it's a little silly. They would never do that. Instead, what they do is there's rumors that start a year in advance. And we know that those rumors are partially seeded by Apple. And then as they come down into their launch month, then there'll be rumors about when their launch event will be. And then they'll announce that this launch event is coming. Then they'll have a launch event. The product's still not available. Then all of a sudden, even though the product's been announced and demonstrated, either video or live, then they will start to, like the tech reviewers will start to get it. And then it will show up on their website, but you still can't order it for another few days. They've built up this anticipation, that desire before availability. If you look at the way Hollywood does it, they're very, very similar. And a movie doesn't just appear one day. There's trailers and there's actors on podcasts and TV shows that all build up to it. They build this anticipation. So what the product launch formula does is it takes that type of anticipation, that type of a sequenced, engineered approach to a new product release, and it brings it to our kinds of businesses where we might not have that budget that Hollywood has or that Apple has. So I think of it, the three main things. We talked about the desire before ability. We talked about the value before reveal, but those things are deployed through stories, through sequences, and through triggers, mental triggers. And the sequences are your pre-launch. There's even a pre-launch, but your pre-launch, which is the time before a product or offer is even available to buy, but you're releasing content that naturally delivers that value, but then builds into that, your offer being the natural next step for people to take. So one sequence is that pre-launch, and then there's your open cart sequence. So that's like when you actually start taking orders. And then you'll have an open cart period that could be anywhere from 4 to 7 days where people can get whatever the special deal is for the launch. And there has to be an open to the open cart and a close to the closed cart. And that close means that if they don't purchase in that time frame, then there's some negative consequence. Either the price will go up, or the bonuses will go away, or the offer will come off the market entirely. And so through those sequences, you're using stories, and really in a big metaphorical sense, you're telling the story of your client's future success, of their future life, of how their life is going to become better. Whether you're teaching them to knit a sweater or have a meditation practice or speak a second language, there's always this transformation that's coming for them. And then the triggers and the mental triggers are, these things that create influence in our heads. That book, Influence by Cialdini, gave me the language to speak about so many of these, but there are things like scarcity and social proof and anticipation and community, authority. And the launch gives you time to deploy all of those or many of those triggers as you go through your pre-launch and your open cart.
Love that. So what you use some good examples, and I want to highlight for people a couple things. One is you used Apple and Hollywood as your two kind of everybody knows examples. If you haven't thought about this before, both Apple and Hollywood have been doing the exact same thing for every single product they've launched for the last several decades. It's methodical. So there isn't really variance from this. There might be a different mechanism here or there that they test, but it's the same process every time. And so, when you map this onto other industries, you'll start to see it. What industries have you seen do a launch where people would be surprised by it and be like, oh shit, I didn't think about launching in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the one that leaps out at me is the gaming industry. They're just absolute masters, just absolute masters at it. I think you look at some of the folks in social that are selling, I think fashion, certainly. I think cosmetics, they do this super well.
Okay. So at this point, you've had tens of thousands of students that you've taught the product launch formula to. This is collectively, $1 billion and beyond in product launches and sales. What are the elements? You gave me kind of this strategy and the core elements, which I love. And I think that's the evergreen stuff and probably why you talk about it. Tactically, what are some of the things that you used to teach that no longer work and the new things that work today that couldn't have happened before?
That's a great question. So I think of it as, let's see. I think of it more as we keep on getting more and more tools. So my first launch was email. There was no other tool because I guess there was web pages and email. And web pages were really hard to create. Literally to create a page was hard to do. So it was essentially email was the only tool. And then we had blogs, and all of a sudden it became easier to publish on your website. And then all of a sudden we could start to put audio on our blogs. Then we could put video, like ugly screen capture video. And then we could then social media came along. And then all of a sudden it got easier to do like nice video, full motion video, like you're watching TV. And then it got where the tools got easier. We could do cinematic, beautiful, full motion, narrative driven video. Then, mobile came along. Every one of these was a new tool we could add into the quiver. Did email still work? Of course it did. Would I still do email only launches? I actually still would. But all these new tools gave us capabilities. Live broadcasts, when that came along, it was an amazing new tool. So all of these things, they just gave us more arrows in the quiver to use, depending on our capabilities, depending on the launch itself, what the offer was, what our audience was. Some of those might fit better for some people than others, for some launches than others. I think things that don't work anymore, I think that the windows have closed or tightened. I did a launch. My first launch for Product Launch Formula was a $600,000 launch. We had big time tech issues. Otherwise, it would have hit that 7 figures. But the second launch was in 2008, and that was the one I made $1 million in sales in 53 minutes. Did 3.7 million in 34 hours, which is crazy. That's like 11 years after I said I just want to make $10,000 in a year, and $1 million in 53 minutes. It's just nuts. That launch, the pre-launch was 27 days long because you could hold people's attention for 27 days back in 2008. There's a lot less noise in the market. These days the pre-launch window has shrunk, and it's more like 4 to 10 days maybe. The open cart used to be longer. That has shrunk down, and it should be maybe 5 days. If you're advanced, it might even be 3 days. So windows have tightened. Audiences have gotten more sophisticated. So I think you do right up front, you have to say to people, yeah, I'm going to have something to sell you down the road, but first we're going to go through this process. I'm going to deliver a lot of value. So that's changed. I think within offers, there used to be this term, the thud factor, and that was the analogy was that was the sound that when you shipped a box of your stuff, the UPS driver would drop the box on the front porch. It would make a thud because there's so much stuff. And these days, adding more and more and more stuff into your offer is not a winning strategy. Everyone's got too much stuff. So I think, we have to be more on point with our offers. They have to be tighter. They have to have less stuff. They have to feel easier. I think we have to be, you can't be tone deaf in your messaging. You have to be aware that there is a greater conversation. If you have a significant launch in your market or your niche, there is going to be a conversation happening about it in social or on Reddit. And so just greater transparency, I think, in all marketing is necessary. So those are some of the tweaks. I think one of the big tweaks since COVID is that it used to be the pre-launch was the star of the show. And you have this amazing pre-launch with amazing content. And then it'd be like, hey, we're open, go buy. And you send a few emails. Now that sequence, once the cart opens, is it's just a lot more important. And something's happening every single day in open cart. Every day has got to be the best day to buy. Every day you're giving incentive for people to show up live or to watch that video and giving them a reason to buy it that day.
So the product launch formula, I kind of learned, I focused on marketing in that era. So when you first launched the product launch formula, there was sort of Mike Dillard and Frank Kern, and what I now refer to as the OGs of internet marketing, all selling products. And the product launch formula was really formative, I think, for lots of them as well. Today, you see, we've got a whole different evolution of, entrepreneurs. And the idea of quote unquote internet marketing is sort of a ridiculous concept, right? Now we just call it marketing. One of the things that has spun out of this over time is the challenge model, which is the idea of, architecting a challenge for people to engage them through the initial process of the launch to sell them something. How does the challenge model work with or differently than the product launch formula?
Well, you might accuse me of being the carpenter who's only has a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. But I think that a challenge model is essentially, it's 100% mapped onto PLF. It's product launch formula. And you look at a typical 5-day challenge, right? And what is it? It's like 3 pieces of content and an offer and a couple days of follow-up. And those content, the big deal with it, the difference in a challenge is that you're giving something to do each day. That's the challenge aspect. And I think it's fantastic. I love it. But it's essentially the same model with a different name. And I don't know, maybe I'm doing it an injustice, but I think it's a great model. But it's essentially, it's the same idea. It's the value before reveal. It's the desire before availability with this added piece of giving something to do each day so they feel like they're winning. So it feels like they're moving forward.
I love it. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So one of the other big shifts, and this is more today than ever, but you went from an email newsletter to information products to PLF Live, to a live event, which you've been doing for 15 years, which I think was the natural progression of people selling courses, right? It's a higher dollar amount back-end offer and community-driven thing. And that's still going today. And by the way, I know people that have been participating in your mastermind for years and rave about it. Today, where information is everywhere, why do people still buy the product launch formula?
I mean, a gazillion reasons. I mean, the biggest reason is results, right? Yeah, you can go to YouTube and watch as many videos as you want about launching a product, and you're going to get surface level information. And it's not going to be the entire cohesive system with coaching that takes you through the entire thing. So we have been, the last time I sold PLF as a course actually was never. It always had some amount of coaching that was built into it. And these days, if you join Product Launch Formula, you get a full year of coaching calls with that. And so you're getting your questions answered. You're getting a system that's proven, a system that's organized, a system that it moves you more quickly to the result. in a more sure way. And we take away all the fluff. It's just, this is what you need to do. You're buying insurance. You're buying insurance that you're just not watching someone on YouTube or reading someone's blog that may or may not have done a launch. I mean, this goes back to that, when you first asked me about that transition and the fact that I've done all these launches before. When you go watch someone on YouTube or read someone's blog, do they really know what they're talking about? Here, you're buying mastery. That's why people still buy product launch formula. They're buying mastery and being coached through the process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it's sort of the same. I mean, I ask it, by the way, I ask that to everybody that's coming from the info product background, because I'm curious about how they all think about it and look at it differently.
I think it's a great question. It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves, because we're fast approaching the time where it's not just you're going, well, we're already there. It's like you go to your favorite tool, your favorite AI tool, and say, create a course for me about how to launch this product that I want to launch. And it will do it. It will do it with great authority. So you think it knows exactly, it knows everything, because AI is really good at having that authoritative voice, and it'll be pretty damn accurate. It'll be strong. And it will only get stronger. And that's for all of us, and every one of us that's selling any type of training, teaching, consulting. That's the world we're in, where we do have to worry about that. So I think it's a fantastic question. It's a question I ask myself just about every day, because this industry is just changing so radically fast.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I want to get back to kind of the evolution of the product. I also want to accentuate that point by giving many people have said this or heard this, but if it was about knowledge, then we wouldn't have so many fat people in the country.
Right. We'd all be like 30 pounds, weigh 30 pounds less, and be able to run a 10K in 40 minutes and have the most amazing relationships, love relationships with incredible kids. And our lives would be all perfect if it's just about more information.
Right. It's execution. And often that's accountability and coaching that leads you there. Okay. So I am always impressed with people that stick to something for a long period of time, plan and commitment that goes to that. You've been running this company for 20 plus years, the product launch formula in particular. Do you get bored talking about the same thing all the time?
I don't. I think actually,
that's
Brad,
amazing.
So, well, first of all, I mean, it's just an amazing game we're playing, right? I mean, it's just a crazy
game of business. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's just a crazy game, because it's changing all the time. It's been 20 years, almost 30 years in online business for me, over 20 years of PLF, and what we've gone through, a great recession. I went through 9/11, which was a big deal when you're published about the stock market. We've gone through COVID, we're going through AI, we've gone through video and mobile and social, and it's just nuts how it keeps changing. I do think maybe one of my superpowers is I'm pretty good at not getting bored. But, and this may sound Pollyanna, but, it's been a long time since I had to work for money. I've done pretty well over the years. I mean, I forget how many $1 million or multi-million-dollar launches in a row it is, but it's in the 20s, like 22 or 23. And remember, I came into this saying if I could make $10,000 in a year, it'd solve everything for me. So it's been a long time since I've had to work for money. And I really do love the impact I get to make on people. And you ever Brad, have you done that Strength Finders thing? It was a big deal like 10 years ago. And so my number one strength, and here I'm spilling the beans, is significance. And when I read about that, I'm like, wow, it just sounds like I got a really big ego. But it doesn't sound like a strength to me. It sounds like I've just got this out of check ego. But I do love making a difference in people's lives, and that this business gives me the ability to do that at such an enormous scale. And partly it's because I've been doing this for 20 years, but I've had over 1 million people go through my masterclass. So every year I do a free masterclass. And in my opinion, it's the second greatest training in the world on doing launches. And in other words, it's my launch for Product Launch Formula, but I go all out and I teach and I teach and I teach because I know people are going to end up buying on the back of it. But 1 million people have gone through that. And dude, I'm just this, grew up, middle class and middle America, nothing special about me. And all of a sudden I'm able to reach 1 million people and to some extent change their lives. It's just, how can you not get thrilled by that?
That's awesome. Well, 20 years in, I hear that you are redesigning, recraft the product, course, curriculum, et cetera. Tell me structurally what's different and tell me how AI is fitting into the product launch formula of 2026.
Well, so since 2008, I've been focused on making the course tighter and more consumable. We make it over and over and over, and every single time it's tighter, more consumable, meets people, ideally meets them where they're at. It isn't just a bunch of long videos. There's all kinds of action guides and accountability built in and coaching built in. We were real early into AI. Actually, Brad, this is a crazy thing. So I started publishing about the stock market in 96. I'd been obsessed about the stock market for a long time. But when I left the corporate world and started being a Mr. Mom, stay-at-home dad, that's when I went deep, deep, deep into the stock market. So I stay up all night long studying the market, then get up and take care of the kids. And the studying the stock market was building neural networks to predict the market. And neural networks is what AI and LLMs are built on. So I was geeking out on AI hard in the early 90s on like a 486 computer using Microsoft Excel to build, like literally pushing the limits of how big a spreadsheet you could build back then. So AI has been like on my radar for a long time. So early on, we jumped into AI. We're now 2.5 years into, we built a tool that's integrated within Product Launch Formula that when people join Product Launch Formula, they get our launch sheet tool, launchy.ai. It's not for sale to the public. It's only for Product Launch Formula owners. And it will literally build out everyone's launch assets. And so when you go into a launch, you need to create things like your pre-launch content, which is usually done in live broadcast or maybe in video. So it will script that stuff out for you. It will script out. It will help you create your offer. It will help you really dial your offer into your ideal avatar. It will create all your sales collateral. So we've gone super, super deep into that. Now, AI is not the answer to everything. If it was, we'd all be gazillionaires. But it's a huge, huge shortcut to, especially if someone's first in getting into this, facing a blank page on like how to put together an offer, how to articulate what that offer is, how to create a series of pre-launch content, how to create an open cart plan. Launchy just does so much of the heavy lifting. So, it's just always been about making PLF easier to consume, quicker to execute, and now with the AI tool, it's next level.
All right, let me talk about, I want to hear about sort of lifestyle and legacy. So you are 64. You could not do this. I know that you like to, both you and your brother John like to play in nature and go do fun stuff and go on adventures. I also have heard that you have intentions of keeping the business in the family, not selling it, but handing it off. How do you want to spend your time, and what do you want the future of the Product Launch Formula to be, and why?
Oh, Brad, you ask a lot of big questions. So first of all, once I started to achieve success, I've always had fun being outside. Being outside has always been a big part of my life. Being out in nature. Athletics has always been a big part of my life. And I didn't want to sacrifice that because I had a business. So even from early on, as I built my business, I'll tell you what, in the first few years, everyone's grinding. There's just no way you're going to get away from grinding when you're starting out. But pretty quickly, as I remembered that goal, $10,000 a year. So when I started making 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, I had a part of me that wasn't just about more. It's not just about more money. It's about what that buys me, and that buys me freedom to have the lifestyle I want. And I've been married forever, for decades. Got those 2 little kids. Well, they have grown up, and luckily enough, they've taken on my passions, which is the outdoors. We love doing wilderness river trips. We just did a 3-week wilderness trip a couple months ago.
Crazy. Like you were out in the wild for 3 weeks?
21 days in the wilderness, no connection.
Where'd you go? What was it?
It was a river trip on the Colorado River through Grand Canyon. So 225 miles down the river through a lot of really big whitewater, a lot of really smooth, beautiful sections, all kinds of side canyons to explore, to huge waterfalls. And it was just amazing. And
out of curiosity, there are different ways to do these trips. Some version of the Grand Canyon trip is I have run through the Grand Canyon, which is a different type of adventure.
Yep.
By water is super appealing to me. You can do these in really fancy ways or really rugged ways. Which direction do you lean on outdoorsiness?
So in one sense, the absolute most hardcore way you could do it, and in one sense, pretty luxurious. So basically, I know that sounds like a weird conundrum, but we did it without any guides, completely on our own, by ourselves. And so it was a group of friends of mine and my kids. Both my kids were on it. And then it's a total of 16 of us, and it's what they call a private trip. So there's no guides, no outfitters. We're 100% on our own, do it yourself. Bring all your own gear, bring all your own food, figure out your own water, figure out hauling out your trash, figure out every little aspect of it. And it's literally, and you have to win a permit. But there's a lottery for the permit to do this. So the lottery is not easy to win. And you win it, and then you have we had 18 months to plan it. And it takes 18 months to plan this, to move 16 people down 225 miles through 21 days, where if you forget your silverware on the first day, you're eating with your hands for 3 weeks. So in that way, it's as hardcore as it gets. And then within that, we're traveling by raft, so you can carry a lot of gear. So we had a full kitchen set up. We've got chairs we're sitting on. We had mandolins and guitars, so people are playing music all the way down the river. So it's not like hardcore backpacking. You got a lot of gear you can carry. And the meals are incredible. Everyone takes turns cooking the meals for the group, and so yeah, but it's fairly hardcore in that there's no one taking care of us. If you screw something up, in 21 days, someone's going to get hurt. There's going to be challenges. In fact, I cut my foot pretty good, and I cut my hand pretty good, because you're physical. You're doing stuff every day, and when now you're in a fundamentally unsanitary environment, you're in the sand and in the dirty water every day, all day, and you're trying to take care of wounds, and it becomes something the whole trip has to manage. But it's part of the appeal for me is I love the challenge. The whitewater is an interesting challenge. Being in the wilderness, I love just being out in the wild. I love being disconnected. I love what it does for my brain, for my spirit. But I also love being with a small group of people where you're working through common challenges and you're sharing amazing joys together. And I just love that.
Yeah, I do too. I really asked myself years ago why I like to go on adventures. And one of the things the thing that came to me immediately was because I can, because I'm fucking tough,
Right.
But on further inspection of those beliefs, you hit on it. Relationships are at the core of it for me. And that's both relationships with the people on the trip, and also the relationship that I develop with myself, and also the relationships that I develop as a result of having the story about the trip. But without the adventure, none of those relationships flourish the way they do with the adventure.
Yeah. So you've run it. Did you do like something like, knowing you probably did like the rim to rim?
I did rim to rim to rim.
Tell people what that means.
So,
This is a big deal. It's a big deal.
So that's running from one side of the Grand Canyon down and up to the other, and then down and back to the beginning. And that was it's a 45-mile run the way that I did it, and a lot of elevation gain, as you might expect in the Grand Canyon. The bitch for me of that particular one was, I was a little cocky going into it, so I didn't train quite as much as I should have. B, 13 miles into it, I broke a bone in my left foot. And, at that point, you're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So what do? Like, you either heli out and you have an emergency helicopter meet you somewhere at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, or you fucking run out. And so, it made for a long 32 miles after that. But it was an adventure for sure.
The 45 miles, there are no easy miles in Grand Canyon. Though that's not like you're running on a road or a track, or
No.
there are no easy miles. Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's fair. What was interesting about it for me too, to that end, what that really meant once I had hurt my foot was, all you want to do when you're doing endurance stuff like that is zone out. Your salvation is in spacing out, right? Is in getting lost in the endurance itself and time just passing. And when you have an injury like that, that's not how it works. You're thinking about every step. And when you have uneven terrain, all you're hoping for is to land flat, right? So you're looking for a flat path, but there are no easy miles in the Grand Canyon. And coddling that foot ultimately rippled into devastation in the rest of my body. When I finished that, both ankles, sprains in both ankles. And I was walking like
your shoulder because you're carrying yourself different, and your hips.
Totally. Yeah. I was walking like I was 95 years old after that for, multiple days. It was hilarious. Do you know Cole Gordon? Cole Gordon runs a company that teaches people how to close sales for high ticket companies. Super, super interesting entrepreneur. He's also been on the podcast, but I was having drinks with him the day after. And I just vividly remember walking from the parking lot into the bar. And it probably took me 20 minutes, and it was like 100 feet. I was just moving so slow. And then I sat down, and he was like, "Oh, where did you come from?" And I was like, "I just ran across the Grand Canyon back." And he was like, "What?" But it was a brutal endeavor. Very different type of adventure than the water, but
it is. Yeah,
yours sounds equally thrilling and differently dangerous.
Thrilling, differently dangerous. Yeah, just oh my gosh, to be out in the wild for that long, you come out a different person, and it's a person that I like better. I love it. I just love that impact. And going back to your question about my kids, they've grown up around the business. They've grown up in the business. My son has been working with me closely for 15 years. My daughter for 5 or 6 years, probably, or even 7. And so they have been both through significant roles, starting at the bottom and working their way up. And they both have significant leadership roles. So yeah, they're on path to take this thing over. And I love to see them doing great work and succeeding. I love that we're going to, if everything goes according to plan, that we're going to continue to be able to support our communities. We have just amazing communities of our PLF owners, of our Launch Club members, of our mastermind. And so, it brings me great joy to work with my kids. They're just badasses.
I love that. I also know that basically every entrepreneur I know loves the idea, at least, of an exit. And a lot of people build their businesses and sacrifice short-term gain for the promise of a long-term reward in the shape of an exit. How do you think about the opportunity to exit versus just handing it off and, sailing off into the wilderness?
Well, Brad, I told you like my origin story sounds like, oh, so humble, Jeff. And the reality is that's what I had no big vision. I just wanted to make $10,000. I was desperate. I'm like, dude, it's like now I can talk about impact and legacy. We talk about all that and not having to work for money, but I was desperate just to make money. I was desperate for that $10,000. And I just want to say that because sometimes people talk about impact, and I talk about impact a lot, but the reality is a lot of people are like, impact's fine. I just need to put food on the table. And I remember that version of myself. And so that's how I started out in business for years. And no one was talking about exits in the 90s or the 2000s. The conversation about entrepreneurship has gotten so much more sophisticated. So I never really thought about that. And then I ended up building basically a personality-based business. And so I had this, 2005 starts PLF, and it's Jeff Walker and PLF. And I had this belief for many years that this was an unsellable business because it was so personality-based. Now, since then, there have been my types of businesses people have had exits. I think there's not that many of them. They tend to be few and far between. I don't think the multiples are that high. But the reality is I built a cash machine, a cash cow, just something that kicked off big profits every year, year after year, year after year. And I was fine with that. And, oh, by the way, I think a lot of people, once their income starts to expand, their lifestyles start to expand in a great big way.
Yeah.
And so cash generating machines don't work for them. They need the exit. It's like the exit is like enforced savings. But I was never that way, because what drove me was getting out in the woods. It wasn't a new car. It was having time off to be able to go skiing, to be able to go mountain biking, to be able to do river trips. That's, I live out in the mountains in Colorado. I live in Durango, Colorado. We're 300 miles from the nearest big city. And I remember one time I won a Ferrari in an affiliate competition, and I parked that car in my garage because I literally never drove it. I drove it to get new plates, and that was it for 6 months. And then I gave it away because it's like, I cannot be seen in this town driving a Ferrari.
Did you give it away in a launch?
I gave it away as a competition for our launch club in our coaching program. So we've got this amazing coaching program. So we said, person that has the best launch gets the Ferrari. Here, boom, it's gone. It's out of my life. But I can't be seen driving that because that's not what this town's about. What's more important in this town is how many days you ski. That's the scorecard. How many days per season that you ski, or how fast you are climbing Telegraph Mountain on a mountain bike. Those are the status symbols in this town. And so, I just, I had this built into my life that, I do. I own some really nice bicycles. I own some really nice guitars, but dude, I drive a Chevy pickup. That's because I would like to have a 911, but I can't fit my mountain bike in it. And it's not a great car for going up to the mountain with my buddies. Right. Yeah. And so anyways, the long story, I didn't grow my lifestyle. I live in the same home for 25 years. I have a few nice things. I travel really well. Sometimes I fly private. So it's not like I'm a miser, but my lifestyle didn't really grow. And so I didn't need that exit. And I know that's not the only reason people go for exits. But I think that's one of the reasons people go for exits, because they grow their lifestyle so much that it's like an enforced savings mechanism for them.
Yeah.
No, and now I've got this built in. My kids are ready. They are this close to taking it over. Dan has been a lot more front stage. In fact, he'd be a good person to be on for you to interview him, because
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear his take on all of this. That's That's got to be fun it's got to be fun for the family. I think that first off, I applaud you for keeping the values that you had. And I think that that's hard, especially when you're living within the ecosystem that rewards something different. In the case of basically every name I mentioned earlier with the OG internet marketers, lifestyle did increase and change. And with that, usually values change. And that's not even a critique, right? I think that there's opportunity to learn, grow, improve most of your life, including your values and your lifestyle, if you want it. And there are good and bad points
Brad,
to any choice you make.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry, but I will say, like the folks you mentioned specifically are all dear friends of mine, and yeah, I would say like like the first time I ever went to an internet marketing, or second time I went to a marketing conference, I got off the plane and I got into, this is days before Uber, got into a park and ride or a super shuttle, got on a super shuttle, right? Because I'm not going to pay for a taxi, because a taxi would cost me like $30 or something. I get a super shuttle for $12. Get on the super shuttle, and there's only one other person on the super shuttle with me. It's Frank Kern.
Yeah.
We don't know each other. We've never met. We will meet at that event, but he's riding the super shuttle. So Frank doesn't ride super shuttles anymore. He drives, he drives Rolls Royces. So a lot of the folks you mentioned, their lifestyles have increased, but their values, they're the same people. Frank is the same person he was back then. Brad's the same person. Mike and Mike are both the same people. I said Brad, sorry about that. Yeah, Mike and Mike, they're the same people they were. So wonderful people. That's one of the greatest things about this business is, I grew up in the OG world of online marketers, hardcore. We're going to sell some shit. We're going to make sales. We're going to market. We're going to build. And the reality is they're just like the most giving people, the most cooperative people, the most supportive people you could ever imagine. And I'm just going to throw a little dig in here. There's also like this parallel personal development world, where there's people, there's us building worlds of, we're going to teach you how to build your business. And there's other worlds of people teaching, we're going to teach you how to become a better person. And I love personal development, and I love a lot of those people, but that world is nowhere near as cooperative as the we're going to teach you how to make $1 million world. It's just a weird dichotomy. It's counterintuitive.
Well, Jeff Walker, last question I have for you is, what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs starting out today?
Well, Keith, that's a hard one. First of all, we started with mindset, right? It really is the answer. It really is. You got to get your head on straight. Confidence is critical, but none of us are confident when we start. So doing is absolutely the way you build confidence. Brad, when I started out, one thing I've done is in addition to being going down wild rivers on rafts, I also kayak, whitewater kayak. And I did that in the 90s, and started in the 90s, back when the gear wasn't very good and the instruction wasn't very good, but I learned how to do it, and I became an expert kayaker. And it was hard. It was difficult. It's cold. It's uncomfortable. There's so many, it's just something I absolutely love too. But I learned how to kayak down difficult whitewater. And that was the first success I had as an adult. And when I started my business, I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm like, I can learn how to kayak. If I can learn how to kayak down class 4 whitewater, class 5 whitewater, if I can learn that, I can learn business. And so it's whatever you can do, wherever you can find the confidence to start and get moving, you got to do that. And then you got to keep every skill out there is just baby steps, putting one foot in front of the other and getting better and better and better over time. And then I think you have to prioritize speed of learning is probably the most important thing there is. As you're looking at any project, as you're looking at any opportunity, what will I learn and how can I learn it faster is as important as how much money can I make. What will this do for my business? It's like, what will I learn and how can I learn faster? And then as you get more successful, I think it all comes down to opportunity cost and understanding that every opportunity that you take, every pitch that you swing at means there's another one you can't swing at. My friend Dean Graziosi talks about getting an amazing book. And he's like, okay, I've only got so much space on that bookshelf back there. And if I'm going to take this book, I have to take one of those books and throw it out, get rid of it. Opportunity cost in figuring out what projects to take on, what opportunities, what to say yes to, which means you have to say no to 99% of what you could do. And as you become more successful, that the opportunity cost becomes more and more critical in your success.
Beautifully said. Jeff Walker, where should we point people?
If you go to productlaunchformula.com, I don't know, this will live forever, this interview, or for a long time. I'm not sure it's going to be there, but what will be there will be some great free training for you on how to do launches. And eventually you go there, I'll try to get you to buy something from me eventually, but not before I deliver some amazing value to you.
It's awesome, man. It's great to see you. Great to hear a lot about the story, and looking forward to next time.
Thank you, Brad.